This is Carrie Grenz. I'm a senior editor at The Scientist. I'm speaking with Nate Allen. He is the head moderator of R Science on Reddit. He's also a principal scientist at Sigma Aldrich, and Nate joins me to talk about 2016 on R Science. I'd like to ask first, what were a few of the biggest stories on R Science this year?
Well, we had a number of big issues come up this year. I'd say one of the biggest ones was the Zika virus coming to the front, and a lot of concern from a lot of rightfully concerned parents as to whether or not this mosquito-borne illness was going to come to where they were and how much concern they could have. We had multiple AMAs addressing the issue, which brought up issues of, infectious disease, health, people, wanting to eradicate all mosquitoes, brought up issues of whether or not that was a good idea or not. Lots of people are in favor of eradicating mosquitoes. We also brought up a lot of issues on our science about the culture of science, about biases with regards to race and biases with regards to incentives driven by publishing. We've touched on that numerous times, both in AMAs and in submitted papers to our science. There's a lot of concern about the validity of statistically based science. The most viewed one was about psychology and reproducibility, which has been a several-year ongoing issue. We've also seen a lot of concerns with studies about baby boomers versus younger generations and kind of the generational friction. There was a lot of stories and discussion about that. Then there's also space. The exoplanets. So there's a group from NASA, from Kepler, whose job is to identify exoplanets orbiting stars outside of our solar system. And they were remarkably successful. It's clearly a developing thing. They did 2 AMAs for us, and there was a number of publications that did pretty well.
I'd like to go back to what you mentioned about kind of the culture of science and those elements that affect the scientific community, race and diversity in particular. Can you recall, was there a specific post that was memorable to you? And was there anything surprising that came out of it?
We had a AMA with regards to racism in science, and it's an ongoing concern to people who have been watching it for years. What was really concerning about it was the reaction of the public to it, our commentators, who seem to be in denial of the issues posed by race and the barriers that intrinsically exist. And this touches on a bigger concern that we've had, the recognition of our society not being equal for everyone is not well held. We've had discussions as to why this is, and there's lots of reasons why you can imagine that's the case, but regardless, it leads people to the conclusion that we're a much more egalitarian world than we actually are. And people seem to have this impression that we live in a post-racist society when all data says that we indeed do not live in that society. So that's really was the worrisome take-home from the comment sections, was there's still a lot of people growing up in the world who don't recognize how far we've come and how far we really need to go.
You mentioned exoplanets, Zika, reproducibility. We and other media outlets have covered all these. Were there any popular posts on R Science that kind of flew below the radar of the mainstream media?
There are things that clearly weren't covered as much as others. I know the top post for the entire year in R Science is actually a quantum logic gate. And that was just a direct link to the journal article itself. So I can't say how much public media coverage that got, but it was by a decent margin our top post. People think quantum computers are a harbinger of the future, and I can't hardly blame them for thinking that. But a pretty decent discussion broke out in the comments section about what it actually means to have a quantum computer and whether or not this will make any difference at all in our world. Like, what are quantum computers good for? That is a discussion that I don't think was had in the mainstream media.
That's interesting. Now, was there an AMA that was really memorable for you from a life scientist about a particular topic in biology?
We had an entire week of AMAs covering human genetics, capped off by Francis Collins, the director of the NIH and the head of the Human Genome Project. I think an astute reader of science recognizes that we're really at the beginning of a revolution in biotechnology, and altering DNA and RNA and biochemical procedures in our body will really change medicine and arguably human evolution.
How did the presidential race register on the forum?
We don't get into politics very much. It's not debated in peer review literature. That being said, we still do see an effect of it because we are a public board. We remove a lot of political things, but then we saw an uptick in them. There's a lot of people that reject scientific findings based on their value set, and we started seeing an uptick on that, and it's concerning.
Can you give an example of one?
There's really a lot of really vile comments that come out. People start feeling rather than thinking. We've had a number of AMAs regarding health and well-being and realities in transgender people. And there was some what appeared to be organized efforts to silence that AMA. And that was a little bit distressing to us as well, because we were merely talking about the facts of the matter.
Lastly, in terms of the 4-year upward trajectory of our science, what changes did 2016 bring, and what are you looking ahead to for 2017?
Well, 2016, I'd say we got a lot more buy-in from the scientific community for our AMA series. We were getting a lot of traction already, but we really started to see a lot of interaction with really the highest levels of scientific establishment, recognizing that this is a valuable exercise. So we're going to continue that, and we hope we can eventually get to our goal of becoming a public forum for the very best in science, talking with the public. I think we're going to get there. That is going to be ongoing. Hopefully we can make another step in 2018. The other big thing we did this year was invited scientific journalists to publicly interact on our science. We think this is important because we want scientific journalists to have a discussion with the general public as well about what they're writing, how they're writing it. There's a lot of concern with fake news in the world today, and we want to stress good journalism and reward good journalism and limit the effects of bad journalism, clickbait journalism, all these things. It's pretty critical. So we're thinking in 2017, we'll start seeing a lot of respected science journalists directly interacting. And I think that's going to be good for the business of science journalism, and I think it's going to be good for our community and indeed our society.
That was Nate Allen. He's the head moderator of Our Science on Reddit. Nate, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciated this discussion, and Happy New Year.